Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these screens behind me. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country and around the world. If it's happening out there, it's coming to you live right here. Happening this very hour, former President Donald Trump set to appear in court as his team tries to throw out a verdict holding him liable for sexual abuse. We'll follow the proceedings in a New York courtroom. The father of the Georgia school shooting suspect just appeared in court after being arrested and charged in connection to the mass shootings at the school. We'll have the very latest on the investigation. Plus, why did federal investigators seize the NYPD commissioner's phone and raid the homes of several top aides to New York City Mayor Eric Adams? We'll tell you. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's begin this hour in New York City, where Donald Trump's defense team is fighting to overturn a verdict that found him liable for defamation and sexual abuse against writer E. Jean Carroll. A panel of judges will hear arguments from Trump's lawyers that are looking to have the verdict tossed out. The jury previously awarded Carroll $5 million in the case. CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman is joining me now to break down the details of the case. So, Katrina, what are we expecting out of court today, and how could today impact this Carroll verdict, the second one?
So, as you mentioned, today there are arguments in front of a panel of 3 appellate judges. These are 3 Democratic judges appointed by Obama and Clinton. Interestingly, Trump has said he's going to attend today, and he never attended this first E. Jean Carroll trial in the first place. So it's a very interesting decision by him to make an appearance at this hearing. The impact that it could have is that in the first E. Jean Carroll trial, a jury found it likely that Trump committed sexual abuse against E. Jean Carroll. They found him liable of sexual abuse. In the second E. Jean Carroll trial, where Trump had a verdict of over $83 million, the judge told that jury to take that assumption as true. So they factored it into their decision, which is why today's appellate hearing could also impact that second case. I'm also outside Trump Tower now, which is where Trump is going to have a press conference at noon, where we anticipate he'll likely talk about what happened in today's hearing and his response to it.
All right. So at this press conference at noon, I mean, the fact that the president, the former president, is thinking about even appearing in court today is kind of surprising. And do we expect, just putting on your lawyer hat, Katrina, for a moment, do you expect a different outcome in this particular case?
I mean, we'll have to see what this panel of appellate judges decides. Trump's attorneys are saying that the judge was prejudicial against Trump, that there are certain witnesses who testified that shouldn't have been allowed to. So there is a lot to weigh here, but it is very interesting that Trump is choosing to attend a trial where he was found liable of sexual abuse, putting a spotlight on that as we're in this final stretch to the election, particularly when just yesterday I was at the status conference and his arraignment in D.C. for the federal election case where he chose not to appear.
Yeah, that is very interesting indeed. Katrina Kaufman outside Trump Tower in New York City for us this morning. Thanks, Katrina. Appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about this 14-year-old boy who's accused of a deadly shooting at a Georgia high school. He has been arraigned. In his first court appearance, the suspect, Colt Gray, was charged with 4 counts of felony murder. He's accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers with an AR-style gun. The teen's father, Colin Gray, was also arraigned in that same courtroom a short time ago. He was charged yesterday with letting his son possess a weapon. That's according to investigators. Father is now facing several charges, including second-degree murder. CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan was in the courtroom for the arraignments and joins me now to talk about this. So Jerika, I believe, guys in the control room, do we have some sound from the arraignment this morning? Let's roll that sound, and Jerika, let's you and I talk about it on the other side.
So I just need to correct a couple of things on the record. I correctly told you the maximum penalty for the crimes for which you are charged. That's correct, except for the fact that you are under 18 years old. So I wanted to inform you and make it clear to you that the penalty for the crimes for which you are charged does not include death.
All right, Jerika, so we just heard a little bit of what the judge had to say. He was speaking to that 14-year-old boy. What's really interesting, as you know, in this case is something that we've started to see, which is parents being held responsible for the actions of their children, specifically as it relates to shootings at schools. What else did you see this morning in that courtroom?
Yeah, and you're speaking about the Crumley case earlier this year when you had the first set of parents in this country charged in connection to a mass shooting in Michigan that also claimed the life of 4 students. As far as today's case, what was so interesting, Vlad, is the idea of seeing all of the parents in that first row in the courtroom who came in and wanted to be there for this first court appearance and having to see that 14-year-old's face again because they needed to clarify that he is not, in fact, facing the death penalty because he is 14 years old. That would only apply if he was over the age of 18. So definitely tough for those parents who I watched. Some were crying, some were holding each other. A few of them had shades on, as you can imagine, just still very stricken with grief and overcome with emotion, and having to sit there and look at the person that is believed to be responsible for the killing of their children, of those 2 teachers, was incredibly difficult. I talked to a couple of those family members as they came out. They didn't have any comment, but it was a bizarre moment. I've never seen anything like that, when it's already painful enough to see the face of someone accused of killing 4 people, to have to come back and see them again. But again, another moment, if you will, because you're talking about a father who we now know gave a gun to his son after the investigators came to the house inquiring about the possibility of his then 13-year-old son wanting to commit a school shooting.
Yeah, first of all, Jerika, you're absolutely right, which is why I wanted to show these pictures and a little bit of this sound from the courtroom, because I was struck by and that's what I assumed when the camera panned to the courtroom. I looked and I saw people holding their hands, people wearing sunglasses, presumably because there are tears in their eyes. And that was incredibly, incredibly moving. And then, as you just explained, this timeline, police a year ago, when the suspect was only 13 years old, began an investigation. Take us through that investigation, and then subsequently what the authorities are alleging, as you just indicated, about what the father's actions in the wake of that investigation, which led up to this shooting.
You know, Vlad, one thing that stands out, and we've heard time and time again, if you see something, say something. So this was a case where people from California, from Australia, reached out to authorities. They then sent that information to the county. The county went to the home in May of 2023 to ask the family questions about possible messages sent on Discord regarding a school shooting. The young man, 13 years old at the time, denied it. The father admitted that there were guns in the house, but he said, we keep them secure, we keep them locked up. And they went about their way because no crime had honestly been committed at that point in time. And that's the tough part about a lot of these types of stories, even when we hear people say, oh, he mentioned something about, or she said she was going to do such and such. But at the end of the day, until the crime is committed, it's really hard for authorities to get in there and arrest anyone. Of course, we've talked about red flag laws to help prevent things from happening. But it's just so unfortunate that there was sort of a peek into what was to come, but who would have ever known for sure and with certainty that that would be what we're here talking about today, the death of 4 people at Appalachia High School.
Yeah, and that 14-year-old now arraigned on 4 counts of felony murder, and his father also arrested and in that courtroom. Jerika Duncan reporting from Winder, Georgia, for us this morning. Jerika, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the Labor Department, which is reporting that the U.S. added 142,000 jobs last month. That's slightly below economists' expectations, but better than prior month. Unemployment fell slightly from 4.3% down to 4.2%. The new numbers are expected to influence the Federal Reserve's highly anticipated interest rate decision later this month. The central bank hasn't cut rates since the COVID-19 pandemic began back in 2020. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is joining me now. So, Ed, has the White House yet responded to today's jobs data?
president in part a little while ago in a written statement, Vlad, saying this is a good sign, and thanks to the work of his administration that's been trying to rescue the economy, but saying in part to voters, don't change horses midstream here. The statement saying with inflation back down close to normal levels, it's important to focus on sustaining the historic gains we've made for American workers. The vice president and I are fighting to expand opportunity to grow the middle class. We'll keep working to support American workers and businesses and to lower housing and health care costs for hardworking Americans. The last thing we should do, he says, is turn back to the failed trickle-down economics pushed by congressional Republicans, like cutting taxes for the wealthy and large corporations, raising taxes on the middle class, and cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and Affordable Care Act. Notable, A, that he calls out the vice president in his official statement. Notable also that he's basically saying to Americans, things are heading in the right direction. Why change it up at this point with 60 days to go until the election?
Yeah, and it looks like we just showed some numbers from the big board, Ed. Looks like the market is relatively content with the data from that labor report this morning. Of course, all of this comes as there's an expected rate cut this month. Contrary to what former President Donald Trump says, the president has no influence of monetary policy, but the Federal Reserve is considering that rate cut. How is that being perceived by the White House?
Well, look, as you said, White House has absolutely no official influence over the Federal Reserve. They're down the street. They do their own thing on their own timeline. What's notable is that at least one other member of the Fed this morning in New York signaled that he's open to a rate cut, which probably is just the latest signal that it will come at some point in the coming weeks. And so that has the potential to potentially influence, voters' thoughts on the economy if the Federal Reserve is saying, yes, by cutting the rates, we're acknowledging that inflation's gotten to a better spot and may now be influencing the jobs market, so we've got to bring it down a little bit to hold off any other bigger losses. But beyond that, all they can do over here is essentially root for one, but there's nothing else they can officially do to make Jerome Powell and friends do that.
Indeed. Ed O'Keefe reporting from the White House for us this morning. Ed, thank you, my brother. Have a nice weekend.
Take care.
All right, let's turn to weather now and bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the first look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Well, we got some changes on the way, Vlad, and they're going to be some good changes. First, let's start off with what's going on around the North American area. We are looking at cloud cover across the southern half of the United States, and that is that same storm system that has brought that flooding rain from Louisiana all the way over to Florida. It's not going anywhere right now, so we're going to have to wait another day or so for that to make its way out of the area. Here's a good look at what's going on the last 12 hours, and you can see that heavy rain. In fact, you can actually see the swirl of an area of low pressure making its way past Louisiana. So this will be with us into the weekend. Then we get a break, and then this fires up once again. Because of that, we still have those flood watches, and we do have some flood warnings, flash flood warnings that you can see in red across Louisiana and even into Mississippi. How much rain can we expect? Well, another 3 to 5 inches if you're going to be south of that I-10, I-12 corridor, 2 to 4 north of that area, and 1 to 2 if you're over in the Tampa-St. Pete area, where you actually got quite a bit of rain yesterday. Now, let's focus on the temperatures. Desert Southwest, it's going to feel like up to 115 in the areas in pink. That includes L.A., San Diego County, all the way over into Phoenix. Where it's in the oranges, you're going to feel a little bit more like 105. When I come back in a couple of minutes, we'll take a look at the big picture and your weekend forecast. Vlad?
All right, looking forward to that, Tammy. Thanks very much. We're getting some breaking news from the Middle East. There are reports a U.S. citizen has been killed in the West Bank. We'll bring you what we know. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We are following breaking news out of the Middle East. A U.S. citizen has reportedly been shot and killed by Israeli troops. That's according to Palestinian media. Reports say she was killed while taking part in a protest against settlement expansion in the West Bank. The Israeli military says it is looking into those reports. I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams to talk about what we know. Holly, what are we learning at this time?
Good morning, Vlad. Well, according to Palestinian media reports, a young American woman who has not been officially named was taking part in a protest in the West Bank and was shot in the head by Israeli troops. Now, we cannot independently confirm those details at this point. But according to those same reports, the woman was shot in the town of Beta near Nablus. That is a frequent flashpoint in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Israel's military told CBS News that it is looking into those reports. The Associated Press is quoting local doctors saying that the American woman was 26 years old and died after arriving at the hospital. They are also saying that she was an American of Turkish descent. Once again, we are working to confirm those details.
Holly, that is a report out of the West Bank, but over in Gaza, it feels on one hand, if you listen to U.S. diplomatic sources, that we are getting the Israelis and the Palestinians, as represented by Hamas, are getting closer to a ceasefire. And on the other, you've got Prime Minister Netanyahu saying no chance. What are you learning?
You know, Vlad, we've spent most of the last year reporting on the October 7th attacks, the aftermath of those attacks and the war in Gaza. But meanwhile, there's also been a spike in violence in the West Bank during the Israel-Hamas war. And in many instances, those are attacks carried out by Israeli settlers on Palestinians. According to Palestinian officials, over 600 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank by settlers and by Israeli soldiers since the October 7th attacks on Israel. The US has imposed sanctions on a number of individuals in recent months over settler violence. As you know, the US supports a two-state solution, and there are hopes of a future Palestinian state in both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
Yeah, the hope is, of course, that the activities, the volatility that is happening in the West Bank does not spill over, because already what's happening in Gaza is terrible. And those hostages, if they would just come home, perhaps this would be something that the Israelis could point to as a reason for a ceasefire. Holly Williams reporting for us from London. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you. All right, this morning, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced an additional $250 million in security assistance that the U.S. plans to send to Ukraine. It comes as President Zelensky meets with defense officials from the U.S. and other allies in Germany. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata is there.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky came straight out the gate here at Ramstein today, warning allies of a significant shortfall in military aid, specifically air defense systems. Now, there have been 24 Ukraine summits like this. This is only the second time he has attended in person. He also urged leaders here to allow Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia, a request the United States has so far denied. What U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin did offer was a $250 million aid package to be announced by the Biden administration. Now, this comes after Ukraine suffered one of its worst single attacks this year, dozens killed in a ballistic missile strike on a military academy in Poltava. And it's just about a month after Ukrainian forces invaded the Kursk region in Russia while still losing territory on its own ground. We need to have this long-range capability, Zelensky says, not just in Ukraine, but also on Russian territory, so Russia is motivated to seek peace. Vlad?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. And we are awaiting an appearance from the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who is set to speak at any moment alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We'll bring that to you once it begins. A fire which broke out at a school dorm in Kenya has killed at least 17 students and left 13 hurt. Officials say over 150 children were at the building at the time of the fire. BBC senior Africa correspondent Ann Soy has the story.
It's a terrible tragedy that people have woken up to. This is a primary boarding school in central Kenya, about 2 hours drive out of Nairobi. Boarding schools at that level are very rare in the country, and therefore people are really shocked. The parents are just coming to terms with that. They have gone to the school. They're receiving psychosocial support. The Kenya Red Cross has set up a tracing desk there. The government, the president has ordered investigations into the cause of this fire that broke out at midnight What we know so far is that there were 156 boys in that dormitory, and it caught fire around midnight. And when they called for help, residents in the neighborhood rushed in to try and help them. But the structure, we understand, was made of wood, and that helped the fire to spread very fast. The police say that 16 bodies were found there, burnt beyond recognition. One more student succumbed after being taken to hospital. So it's a terrible tragedy. And we do not know the cause of the fire yet. Those investigations are underway.
All right, Ann, thank you very much. Federal investigators have seized the phone of the NYPD commissioner. Up ahead, we'll explain why and what it can mean for Mayor Eric Adams. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we are following. Hunter Biden pleaded guilty to 9 charges in federal court in Los Angeles yesterday, just before jury selection was about to begin. The president's son admitted he failed to pay more than $1 million in taxes. He previously pleaded not guilty. In a statement, Hunter Biden said he wanted to protect his family from the embarrassment of a trial. He now faces up to 17 years in prison when he will be sentenced in December. Moving towards the central United States this hour, the 85-year-old man charged with shooting a black teenager who rang the wrong doorbell is set to be in a Missouri court. Andrew Lester is charged with first-degree assault for shooting Ralph Yarl after the teenager went to his address when attempting to pick up his twin brothers. Prosecutors argue there was a racial component to the incident. Lester has pleaded not guilty and claimed he was acting in self-defense. And moving over to the east, cars were stranded and stalled in Tampa, Florida after heavy rainfall in the area flooded roads last night. More storms are expected over the weekend, bringing the risk of even more flooding to the already overwhelmed area. All right, turning back now to our top story. The 14-year-old boy accused of the deadly shooting in a Georgia high school and his father made their first court appearance today, and it comes as some students return to class to collect their belongings for the very first time. CBS News national correspondent Dave Malkoff is in Winder, right outside the high school where this all began. Dave, we know that classes have been canceled for the week, but some students were allowed, as we just indicated, to return to the school today. Have you had a chance to speak to any of them?
Hi there, Vlad. Yeah, some of the kids are coming back to go to the memorial that has popped up, not just in front of the sign behind me, but also there is a big flagpole where the Georgia flag and the United States flag are at half-staff back there. And underneath that flagpole, there are lots of balloons, lots of teddy bears, notes to the coach who lost his life here, and also pictures of the 2 students and the 2 teachers who were killed, saying that they are forever in their hearts, flying high right under that flagpole right there. So everybody's kind of gathering there. That's happening right now, Vlad. And what's weird is even though school is canceled yesterday and today, the school bell was still ringing. So we were standing here, and that was kind of an eerie thing to hear, the beep of the school bell, bringing children to class who are definitely not coming today or yesterday.
And Dave, as you know, the suspect and his father are in a courtroom this morning. We're in a courtroom earlier today being arraigned. Any reaction from community members about that?
Yeah, people were shocked to learn that now the father is being charged in this. But there is precedent in this in the United States. We are now seeing this happen, where if you do allow a troubled teen access to a weapon, there is precedent that you will end up facing charges yourself. Colin Gray, who's 54, is now charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. That second-degree murder charge, the 2 counts of second-degree murder charge, that's the same charge that his son Colt Gray, who is 14 now, is being faced with, he's facing 4 counts of those second-degree felony murder charges. But remember, he was 13 years old in a neighboring county, Jackson County, when he was visited by the sheriff's department on an FBI tip because they saw somebody posting with a username that had to do with the Sandy Hook shooting and also an email address that was possibly connected to the suspect in this case. So the FBI got all these tips about someone posting about possibly shooting up a school in the neighboring county. They had that visit from the sheriff's department. They talked to the sheriff's department. They talked to the father and the son, and the father assured the sheriff's department that he had no access to any guns without his adult supervision. The son did have access to hunting rifles at that point, but as we know now, after that meeting with law enforcement, there was a Christmas gift given to the son, an AR platform rifle, the same type of rifle that we saw in the security photos from inside the building laying on the ground there, Vlad.
Incredibly disturbing details. Dave Malkoff reporting from Winder, Georgia. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Okay, the court proceeding in New York City has just wrapped up. That court proceeding having to do with President Trump, who's appealing a judgment in the E. Jean Carroll case in hopes of it being thrown out. CBS News reporter Graham Cates is following the latest for us and joins me on the phone to talk about it. Graham, describe the scene in the courtroom. What'd you hear?
Hi, Vlad. This is a very brief argument in Trump's appeal of his first E. Jean Carroll trial. Remember, he had 2 of them. This was the one in which in May of 2023, a jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation and awarded Carroll, the writer, $5 million. Trump's attorney, John Sauer, called the case a, quote, quintessential he said, she said case, and told the panel of appeals judges that there was evidence that was implausible and should not have been admitted. He cited testimony from 2 additional women who had made kind of similar claims about Trump groping them to the one that Carroll made, which Carroll's team had said was kind of evidence of a pattern of behavior by Trump. And Sauer said those claims were outdated and not supported by evidence and should never have been allowed. Now, Carroll's attorney, Roberta Kaplan, during her 10 minutes, said those were evidence of crimes, that even the one that took place, there was one allegation that dated back to 1979. She said that there was a specific federal statute in 1979 that applied to that claim, and that was important for what the appeals court is considering in Trump's effort to overturn this case. And she said that they were evidence of a kind of a pattern of sort of pleasantly chatting with women before, in Kaplan's words, pouncing. And the last thing was that Kaplan noted that Trump never attended this trial. His team never called any witnesses. The closest thing to testimony from his part during it was in the form of a deposition that she conducted under court order. And she noted that she presented Trump during the deposition with the famous Access Hollywood tape where he described grabbing women by their genitals, which she called a confession of this behavior, and said that Trump defended his words during that deposition. And so that's where they left things. It's going to be several months before this panel decides on it.
All right, Graham Cates reporting for us on this trial that Trump is facing again with E. Jean Carroll, the sexual abuse case. His lawyers fighting to overturn that verdict. Graham, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining.
We want to take you now to Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is speaking alongside the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles Q. Brown. They're addressing reporters after meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Let's listen.
Mr. Umerov again, after our recent meeting at the Pentagon. He is a valued partner and a friend. And it was an honor to have President Zelensky join this contact group for the first time here at Ramstein. The whole contact group heard his passionate call for more security assistance for Ukraine. And I share President Zelensky's outrage over Putin's most recent barrage of airstrikes, which have been some of the heaviest since Moscow's full-scale invasion in February 2022. Ukrainian forces still face perilous battlefield conditions, especially in Pokrovsk. But Ukraine's troops continue to fight with skill, courage, and daring. And that's why we're meeting at such a dynamic moment on the battlefield. Ukrainian forces have advanced into Russia's Kursk region since early August. And for 2.5 years, Ukraine has more than held its own against the largest military in Europe. And above all, the credit for that goes to Ukraine's brave troops. But I'm also deeply grateful to the allies and partners who have given Ukraine's forces the tools to defend themselves and their country. Some 50 nations of goodwill were back at Ramstein today, and they continue to rush urgently needed capabilities to Ukraine, including air defense, armor, artillery ammunition.
All right, you're watching the Defense Secretary of the United States speaking with reporters in Germany alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If there is news made at this press conference and during these statements, we'll bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris received another big endorsement this morning. More than 100 law enforcement officials and officers have signed a letter endorsing the Harris-Walz ticket. The letter says, in part, we trust Vice President Harris and Governor Walz to support law enforcement's work to keep communities safe because they have been doing it their entire careers. The endorsement comes as former President Donald Trump is set to speak before the National Board of the Fraternal Order of Police later today in North Carolina. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is following the Harris campaign in Pittsburgh. So Weijia, break down the significance of this police endorsement today.
Vlad, it's great to see you. So Donald Trump has always characterized himself as the law and order candidate. At the same time, he has criticized Democrats, including Vice President Harris, for being too soft on crime. And that is why this endorsement is so significant, especially because of the timing, which is no accident. As you mentioned, them releasing this letter right before Trump is to address the Fraternal Order of Police. And we're talking about 100 law enforcement officials from across the country. Everyone from police chiefs to sheriffs to FBI agents. And so it is significant that these officers have signed on to say that they're actually supporting Harris-Walz and not Trump. But of course, I'm sure this is something Trump himself could address, as we hear from him later today. And I can't imagine that he is pleased with this. But they have said their piece, as you read in the letter. They also say that, Harris and Walz are the best suited to be able to keep this country safe.
Yeah, Weijia, it is an interesting endorsement. And I wonder if we are expected to hear from the Vice President or Governor Walz, because, as you know, she's in Pittsburgh, and my understanding is the plan is that she's going to stay there until the debate as she prepares to hunker down to prep for that debate.
That's right, Vlad. We are professional stalkers sometimes, and so we are following the vice president here in Pittsburgh, even though she doesn't have much on her public schedule. In fact, we're not supposed to see her at all today, but she is hunkering down here with her team, with her aides, with her speechwriters to prepare for really an incredibly huge moment for her and for Trump coming up on Tuesday. So why Pittsburgh? Why Pennsylvania? Well, as we've been talking about for so long now, any path to victory is likely going to have to go through Pennsylvania. And so when she takes herself off of the campaign trail formally, where she's not doing these massive events in key battleground states, meeting with thousands of voters, this is a way to still be able to engage, because even though she'll be holed up in a hotel room somewhere, she still has to come out and get some fresh air, get a sandwich, or a hoagie, I should say, here in Pennsylvania, some coffee. And it's at those places that the campaign thinks she'll have opportunities to meet and greet people, to say hello, and to really show her commitment to to the state of Pennsylvania. And we should mention that back in 2012, then candidate Barack Obama also camped out in Nevada. So this is not a new strategy, but it is, one that she's hoping will turn into some support from Pennsylvania in November.
All right, Weijia Jiang reporting for us. And Weijia, I'm sure your millions of fans are going to have a bone to pick with you because when we came into the segment, you said it's good to see me, which of course it is, but you always give a shout out to everybody. It's good to see everybody. So I'm here for watching.
Good to see everyone, but I haven't seen you for so long, Vlad, that I was super excited. But of course, good morning to everybody.
Exactly. We love it. Weijia, we love you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. We will have full coverage of the first debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump on Tuesday night. It's hosted by ABC News. You can watch the debate, though, right here on CBS News 24/7. Pre-show coverage begins on America Decides at 5 p.m. Eastern. All right, let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with another look at the national forecast. Tammy, it's good to see you.
It is good to see you. Are you a fan of Game of Thrones?
Uh-oh.
Maybe?
Can we hear you, Tammy?
Oh, I was asking if you're a fan of Game of Thrones.
Am I a fan of Game of Thrones? I'm not only am I a fan of Game of Thrones, Tammy, I've watched all the series, all the spinoffs, and I've read the books. So to answer your question,
oh my God.
Bend the knee.
Yes. Okay, well, then you'll get this sort of fire and ice reference that I'm doing. This is a miniature version. We're going to talk about the temperatures. I just thought maybe, I love Game of Thrones, too. All right. We are looking at the heat in the Southwest. It is just after 7:30 in the morning, 94 in Phoenix, 72 in Los Angeles. That is incredibly, incredibly warm. Juxtaposed to that, we're going up to the upper Midwest, where they are right now in the 50s and the 60s, and likely won't climb much off of that, and that's all because of a front that moved through the area, and that front is going to continue pushing to the East Coast, bringing a really comfortable and much cooler day by the time that we get into Sunday. Let's take a look at what your weekend is going to bring. We are going to be looking at the heat continuing in the Southwest. Triple digits, upper 90s. It's going to cook. Then we head into the upper Midwest, and look at this. We're looking at temperatures once you get up into, Kansas City, on up into Minneapolis and Chicago. You're looking at temperatures that are generally going to be in the 60s. And that is going to continue in the form of some 70s into the Northeast. Of course, Miami, that stays hot all the time. Then we go into Sunday, and look at that. It is nice and cool in the Northeast, still cool into the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, and still cooking here in the desert Southwest. We'll have more of the big picture when I come back in just a couple of minutes. Back to you.
All right, Tammy, you know what I'm going to say, right? Winter is coming.
Oh,
I mean, you set me up. You set me up.
I should have known it.
I had to take it.
I should have known. Okay.
Always good to chat with you, Tammy. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, football is also coming to soccer-crazed Brazil. What to watch as the NFL takes its first ever regular season game to South America tonight. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, we have some news in on a story that is still developing. The State Department has just confirmed the death of an American woman in the West Bank. In a statement, the department called her death tragic without immediately assigning responsibility. Palestinian media says the shots were fired by Israeli troops. We have not yet confirmed that. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller went on to say, "We offer our deepest condolences to her family and loved ones. We are urgently gathering more information about the circumstances of her death, and we'll have more to say as we learn more." The other statement that has come out is one from the Turkish government because she is an American citizen, reportedly of Turkish descent. That statement from Turkish officials also blaming Israeli soldiers. Again, CBS News has not confirmed those details, but we will continue to follow the story. We'll have much more on it coming up in our noon hour. Meanwhile, closer to home, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is facing a major crisis as federal investigators zero in on the highest ranks of his administration. Federal agents raided the homes and seized the phones of the New York City Police Commissioner and other top officials in the mayor's inner circle. The nature of the investigation is still unclear, and none are accused of any crime, But CBS News New York reporter Elijah Westbrook is following the details.
Good morning. Well, at this time, the nature of this investigation still remains a mystery, but sources are reporting to CBS News New York that federal agents have raided the homes of Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright and City Schools Chancellor David Banks. The two live together, plus the chancellor's brother, Deputy Mayor Philip Banks, and Police Commissioner Edward Caban. We're also learning at this time that the feds have seized electronic devices from the home of Timothy Pearson. He's a mayoral advisor and former high-ranking NYPD. Again, at this time, the details surrounding this active federal investigation remains unclear at this time, but this all went down on Wednesday, and we are keeping a close eye out on any new developments that may come our way. That is the latest at this time from City Hall here in Lower Manhattan. Elijah Westbrook, CBS News, New York.
All right, Elijah, thank you very much. Much more coming into our newsroom right now. We're going to be right back. Stick around. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Packers and Eagles will face off tonight in Brazil, marking the NFL's first ever regular season game in South America. Last night, the Chiefs beat the Ravens 27-20 in the season opener. Chiefs rookie wide receiver Xavier Worthy scored a pair of touchdowns in his debut. Meanwhile, star tight end Travis Kelce was relatively quiet with only 3 catches for 34 yards. Ted Nguyen joins me now for a look at this weekend's slate of games. He's an NFL staff writer for The Athletic. So, Ted, there are 2 strong offenses facing off tonight. What are your keys to winning this game for the Eagles, and what should the Packers be thinking about?
Yeah, for the Eagles, they're going to have to learn how to beat the blitz. Last season, defensive coordinators were really testing quarterbacks Jalen Hurts by blitzing him a ton, and they just didn't have a lot of great answers for it. And I expect to see a lot of the same from the Packers. They're going to be running a new offense. They have a new offensive coordinator with Kellen Moore, so they're going to be testing that pregame operation, testing if he has those answers to the blitzes. And for the Packers, I think they're really going to have to run the ball. They signed Josh Jacobs to a huge contract. And I think the Eagles defense is going to sit back, play coverage, kind of play in those lighter boxes and really test if the Packers are going to be willing to run the ball. And I think they should be able to run the ball on this front.
So here's a question. Why did the NFL choose South America and specifically Brazil to hold this game?
I think they're just trying to outreach throughout the different countries that they haven't been in. I think there is a large contingent of football fans in Brazil. I mean, just based on my Twitter, I interact with a lot of fans from Brazil, so I think they do have a fan base that's interested in the game. So it's good that the NFL is going to bring one with 2 really good teams to them.
All right, let's talk about the Bengals, who struggled last season after an injury to quarterback Joe Burrow. Are they going to get off to a good start this season against the Patriots on CBS? That's a game that can be broadcast right here.
Yeah, to me, I think this is one of my locks for the week. I really think the Bengals match up well against the Patriots, who might be one of the worst teams in the league this season. The Patriots really can't pass block that well, which is one of the reasons they're not having first-round draft pick Drake May start. They're having Jacoby Brissett kind of play the sacrificial lamb and kind of take those hits while they're figuring out the offensive line. And for the Patriots, they have very young wide receivers, and they're going to be facing off against a Bengals defense that I think is going to play a lot of man coverage and really challenging them. And I just don't know if they have the talent or kind of wherewithal to beat them at this point of their career. So to me, it's a very bad matchup for the Patriots, and I think the Bengals are going to start off the season very strong.
All right, Ted Nguyen reporting for us. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Rob.
All right, let us bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Souza with one last look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Well, Vlad, first I have to say go Eagles. And I'll tell you, in Sao Paolo, we are going to be looking at temperatures that are going to be about 68 at kickoff, partly cloudy skies and a light southeast wind. We are going to be looking at rain over the weekend right along the East Coast, down into Florida and the Gulf Coast, sunny in the mid part of the country and hot in the Southwest. Vlad?
All right, Tammy, appreciate you. Folks, an encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.